Hey friends, I'm in my car lawn and I'm reading the Word, and I've been doing this. Well, I did a little bit of it on YouTube. If you want to go to YouTube and find me on there, but I've been listening to Christian songs and then like dissecting them, breaking them down, seeing where the artist or the writer is getting the Bible verses from, or where it's coming from in the Bible. And today's song is That's Who I Praise by Brandon Lake. He has a lot of references of different people in that song, but I'm only going to pull out two of them. And the first one is, I want to sing like Silas, tearing down the prison walls. And that's Acts chapter 16. And Paul and Silas were put in prison because they exorcised a demon out of a slave girl. And the people were mad at them because she was like a fortune teller, like using the demon as like a fortune teller, and was making them profit. So because they casted the demon out, she could no longer do fortune telling. And so they were mad and were like, we don't even believe in stuff, why are you even here? So they threw them in jail. And not only did they throw them in jail, but they threw them in the innermost part of the jail, which is like the most secure part of the jail. And this is where I'm going to start reading in the Bible. It's verse 25. It says, about midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the prisoners were listening to them. Suddenly, there was such a violent earthquake that the foundations of the jail were shaken, and immediately all the doors were opened and everyone's chains came loose. When the jailer woke up and saw the doors of the prison standing open, he drew his sword and was going to kill himself, since he thought the prisoners had escaped. But Paul cried out in a loud voice, don't harm yourself, because we're all here. The jailer called for the lights, rushed in, fell down trembling before Paul and Silas. He escorted them out, saying, what must I do to be saved? And they walk him through how to be saved, and him and his household were saved. That jailer was. So I really like how God sometimes puts you in like really difficult places or situations, places that you're uncomfortable with, but it's for you to be the light in the darkness. And in Brandon Lake's song, That's Who I Praise, he wants to praise a God who can break down prison walls, who can part the waters and let, Moses cross. God who actually has done things, has proven his amazing power that he has. And then the other part of the song that I was going to pull from was, it's in Daniel chapter 3, and it says in the song, I want to face that fire. It won't burn me though. God's got my back. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. And this is talking about, so the Chaldeans were wanting these Jews to not be like, where they were in their like social status, because God had kept them. And, so they made up this like decree. They had this king had made a decree, when he hears sounds of horns, flutes, harps, drums, any kind of music, they must fall down and worship this golden statue of the king Nebuchadnezzar. And whoever doesn't fall down and worship will be thrown into a furnace of blazing fire. Well, of course, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did not, because they serve God, the only God, and only true God. So Nebuchadnezzar became super angry, like filled with rage. And so I'm going to start reading in 19, and it says, then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with rage, and the expression on his face changed toward Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He gave orders to heat the furnace 7 times more than was customary. And he commanded some of the best soldiers in his army to tie them up and throw them into the furnace of blazing fire. So they're tied up, and then these men from his army, that threw them in here, that the fire was so hot that it actually burned the men up that were throwing them into the fire. And then I'm going to pick back up. Hang on, let's see. Okay. Then on verse 24, then King Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in alarm. He said to his advisors, "Didn't we throw 3 men bound into fire?" "Yes, of course, your majesty," they replied to the king. He exclaimed, "Look, I see 4 men, not tied, walking around in the fire unharmed, and the 4th looks like the son of the gods." Nebuchadnezzar then approached the door of the furnace of the blazing fire and called, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you servants of the Most High God, come out." So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire, with the satraps, prefects, governors, and the king advisor all gathered around. So everybody saw. They saw that the fire had no effect on the bodies of these men. Not a hair of their head was singed. Their robes were unaffected, and there was no smell of fire on them at all. Nebuchadnezzar exclaimed, "Praise to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent his angel and rescued his servants who trusted him. They violated the king's command and risked their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God." And that statement right there just elevates the God of all gods. I mean, he put God above his own self. But if you read all that, he's still not humbled, and he still doesn't really believe. It takes him a while. But anyways, so both of those are miraculous acts that God has done throughout the Bible. If you want to give me another song, and I'll find it in the Bible and I'll put it on here, or I'll just keep chugging along. If I don't get any comments on here, it's fine. But I'd love for you to join me and in reading God's Word.